please. All right, we already prayed. I did a Bible study that I have told myself for 30 years. You need to do this. You need to do this. I said it recently in the last few days of through our Bibles videos. This is a study you need to do. Hey, I'm going to get to this eventually. Well, eventually came today. And thank you. And I was studying right up until, like I said, just about an hour ago. Just a lot of stuff to cover, but I think I got short enough outline to where we can finish up tonight. That being said, this is probably a Bible study I'll never do again or give publicly again. Maybe, who knows? So with that, is everything recorded, audio on? That way, sometimes, you want to make sure that it's going. We're going to talk about the 12 tribes of Israel and the different lists, because I have said a few times that no two lists are the same. That's a little bit of hyperbole or hyperbole, depending on where you're from. Both of those mean exaggeration. Of course, there are lists that are about the same, but there are different places where different names are missing. And so we're going to cover them, find out why they're missing, and that's going to be the Bible study tonight. Sound good? All right. So let's go ahead and just start. So we're going to compare the different lists of the 12 tribes of Israel. Let's go to Genesis 29. And if you look over there, what I'm going to do is I'm going to mention these. This is probably one of those you want to write down some of this, or actually it'll be on YouTube. So Genesis 29, of course, the famous race to have kids, Jacob, not complaining at all. And there's some, just some weird stuff through here. Matter of fact, going as far as, using mandrakes to hire out your husband. What's a mandrake anyways? Is that like a pomegranate? What's a mandrake? Nobody knows. All right. Yeah, I might as well look it up, Joe. Thank you, VP. It's a mango?
That's just what I always think.
I always think pomegranate. What?
A drake is a type of duck, but I don't know.
I've always thought it was ducks.
Ducks?
I think it's a fruit.
I thought it was a fruit.
It's a root of a plant. Mandrake is a root of a plant historically derived either from plants of the genus Mandragora found in the Mediterranean region,
So it's a vegetable.
or from other species such as Bryonia alba.
So we've seen that movie with Rex O'Hurlihan. What's the name of that movie?
What?
What's the name of that movie? Rustler's Rhapsody. And, he's eating roots, so maybe there is a psychedelic effect to these. I don't know. So now Leah is the first to start. Can I just say throwing out kids? I mean these, they're just, yeah. But Leah's story through these chapters is sad. She named one of her kids. She said, "Because I have been hated, my husband will now love me." It's not how it works. Having kids doesn't do that. And then towards the end, when she had another group of 2, she said, "Maybe he'll dwell with me." And so Leah, all she wanted was for her husband to love her and to want to be in her tent. Even going so far as to taking mandrakes and trading mandrakes and whatever that is. Anyway, so verse 32, you see there, we see Reuben, who's the firstborn. As we know, he lost his right to the bloodline because of his intimacy with Bilhah. Bilhah was Jacob's kind of wife, kind of nurse, had a couple kids. And so this would be his stepmom that Reuben messed with here. Verse 33 is Simeon, secondborn. He lost his right to the bloodline at the slaughter of the circumcised at Shechem. Remember that? He was also the one that was bound in place of Benjamin when they went down the second time into Egypt to buy food. And they didn't. They said, "Well, we'll bind." No, actually, the first time, and then the second time found out who he was. Yeah, and so Simeon was the one that was bound. Verse 34, you see there, Levi. He lost the right to the bloodline for the same reason Simeon did, because Simeon, Levi, took the people of Shechem because they defiled Dinah, their sister, from the same mother, and then had those people circumcised. When they were sore on the third day, went in and killed all the people. Which I identify with. So then you get down to verse 35, Judah, the fourth born. So the fourth born, the bloodline to Christ goes through him. Remember, he has a relationship with his daughter-in-law. Onan died, not because of what people think, but because, the bloodline couldn't be Onan and Tamar, yeah. And because then it would only be 25% Jewish of Abraham's line. So that is the reason they couldn't. But anyways, Levi ends up being the priestly line. But Judah, the bloodline to Christ goes through him, and so the relationship with his daughter-in-law, Tamar, brings twins, and one of those Pharez, and Pharez then is in the genealogy. Then we look at Genesis chapter 30. Now we see two kids being born by Bilhah. Now this is the Bilhah that Reuben grows up and has a relationship with and ends up getting in trouble for. See there in verse 6, Dan, so he's the fifth born. Now Dan won't be mentioned in the Revelation list, and I'll show you why. Verse 8, you see Naphtali. And then you keep on going down here, verse 11, kids by Zilpah. You have Gad, you have Asher. And then Leah gets in the mix again. This is after the mandrakes. Here in verse 18, Issachar is the ninth born. Zebulun is the 10th. And then you see the daughter there, Dinah, mentioned in verse 21. She's mentioned because of the defilement by Shechem. However, I think there were more daughters born than just Dinah. But we're only trying to tell the story as to how it pertains to these people. So we get to Genesis 35. We're still in Genesis 30. Down at verse 24, we find Joseph being born. Rachel and Joseph bickering a little bit because Rachel, couldn't have kids. Jacob was fine with that, by the way. But Joseph ends up being the favorite. Then we get then we skip all the way ahead to Genesis 35. They're on their way back. They've left Laban. They've left everything. They have their cattle and everything with them. And they meet Esau. They keep on going. And while they meet him, Rachel is pregnant. So in chapter 35 and verse 18, we find Benjamin being born. But remember, verse 18, Rachel, while she's dying, calls him Benoni, which means son of sorrow. And so Jacob was having none of that, changed his name to Benjamin, son of my right hand. Okay, so there's where the 12 tribes of Israel come from. The 12 sons and Dinah. Any questions on that so far? All right, let's go to, we're still in chapter 35. Now let's go down to verse 23. So this list lists the 12 again, and they're listed by mother. If you've ever used Microsoft Excel and you sort by one, sort by the other. So obviously 29, 30, and 35, they're sorted by birth order. Here in Genesis 35, they're sorted first by mother, then by birth order by that mother. So 35, look at 23. This is kind of boring so far. Don't worry, it'll get better. The sons of Leah, Reuben, Jacob's firstborn, Simeon, Levi, Judah, and Issachar and Zebulun. So now it skipped the Bilhah and Zilpah kids. The sons of Rachel, Joseph and Benjamin. So now it goes from Leah to Rachel. And so now the wives aren't in order. The wives are in order, Leah, Rachel. See that there? Then the sons of Bilhah, Rachel's handmaid, Dan, Naphtali. The sons of Zilpah, Leah's handmaid, Gad and Asher. These are the sons of Jacob, which were born to him. And Padanaram. I've never said it out loud. So there you go. I had to think about it for a second. Panorama. What?
Pandanaram.
Pandamacaram?
Pandanaram.
Pandamaram. No, Padanaram.
Padanaram.
Padanaram. Jackie suggests that we call them Padanarama. All right. So now, let's head to Egypt. Shall we go to Genesis 40, 6. See, and the part I'm going to find interesting on this, you aren't. I'm sorry. I don't know if I played that up too much, but I don't know. I think Chris will like it. We'll see. Maybe you will. Who knows? Maybe I'm not giving you enough credit. All right, so now they're heading into Egypt, Genesis 46, and then there's a count here. Look down to verse 9 and 10. See there it mentions the sons of Reuben. Verse 10, the sons of Simeon. 11, the sons of Levi. 12, the sons of Judah. The sons of Issachar. 13, 14, the sons of Zebulun. And then Dinah is mentioned again. And that is 33 people in those verses. When they're heading to Genesis, or when they're heading to Egypt, 33 people from Leah are heading down. Now here, it lists Zilpah second and Rachel third. And I didn't look up instances for that. The sons of Zilpah, I forgot. Okay, I need to back up for a second. Can I do that real quick? I forgot to tell you when Jacob was going to meet Esau, he sent them in least favorite to most favorite. Bilhah, Zilpad, whatever it was, Zilpah, whatever. And then Leah, and then Rachel. Imagine being Leah, really. I get to go out and be killed with my kids, so Rachel and her kid can be okay, and then Leah's sitting there counting her 7 kids, and Rachel with her 1. As long as that one survives, right? Do you think there's some bitterness in that family? All right. So now go back to this. So the sons of Zilpah, see verse 16 and verse 17, the sons of Gad, the sons of Asher. There are 16 people in that group. The sons of Rachel, verses 19 and 20, and their children, 14 people. Verse 19, Joseph and Benjamin. Now notice in verse 20 it says Manasseh and Ephraim listed. Manasseh and Ephraim are the sons of Joseph. Okay? So the sons of Joseph, which were down in Egypt, Joseph had 2 children, and so they're counted here, and that's going to be important later. Does everybody understand who Manasseh and Ephraim are? They are the sons of Joseph, born to him in Egypt to an Egyptian wife. Okay? Joseph was the favorite, got sent off to prison, sent off to, first sold to Potiphar, then went to prison. Anyways, then we find the sons of Bilhah. See, some of you trying to get creative with Bible names. Why don't you ever do Bilhah? Then you see Dan there in verse 23 and verse 24, Naphtali. 7 people on this one. And they're a little bit younger, but 70 people total. You find that in chapter 46 and verse 27. Okay, so that's heading in. So now we're going to get to the death of Jacob, who is Israel. You ready for this? Go to Genesis 48. Yeah, see, you're going to think this is dumb. Well, maybe not dumb, just not interesting. Oh, well, I find it interesting. All right. So, Genesis 48, we find the sons of Joseph are blessed. So Joseph gets a double portion of inheritance. Let's look here at chapter 48. Let's go to verse 5. And now thy 2 sons, Ephraim and Manasseh, which were born unto thee in the land of Egypt, before I came unto the land of Egypt, are mine, as Reuben and Simeon, they shall be mine. So there you see Ephraim, Manasseh raised up to the level of the other sons. So what happens here in Genesis chapter 48 is Joseph is elevated in sorts to the firstborn status and legality, in that he gets a double portion. And each portion goes to his sons. Remember, the firstborn, double portion. However, the right of the firstborn, that's the right of the firstborn going to Joseph, the number 11 child. But the bloodline will go through the 4th, but the legalities and everything goes through Joseph. And then the, did I say that right? The priestly line through the third, the Levite. Okay? So, here's my new opinion. I have been trying to figure out why, because before, when we were in our Bible reading, I even said this on a couple videos. I am not sure why God changed from the firstborn being the priest of every family. He switched it then to being the tribe of Levi. And so I've always been trying to figure that out. And so what happened here in heaven, I'm not going to get to that. I'm not going to talk about that yet. There always has to be 12 tribes. But however, Jacob just did is he created a 13th tribe by giving a double portion to Joseph. So in doing that, 13 tribes, we still have to have the land, inheritance, and everything else be 12. Otherwise, some things are going to get goofed up later. So what God does, instead of taking the firstborn of every tribe, every family, he then just takes the Levites instead. Now, if you remember in your reading, the difference between the number of the firstborn of every family in Israel and the Levites all together were 436 was the difference in numbers over 40 years. Is that the right number? And then remember, they had to redeem those extra 436 with an offering. So when God took the Levites instead of the firstborn, the number was about the same. And so what's interesting there is, to me, so took the Levite instead of the firstborn, and what I could never figure out, if God knew that it was going to be the Levite, not the firstborn, why did he ever say the firstborn in the first place? If God is all-knowing, why didn't he just come out first and say, hey, the Levite's mine, instead of the firstborn? And what we find here is we find God allowing for if we ever have a question about free will, God honors the free will decision of Jacob to create a 13th tribe, and then later carries that 13th tribe to make that tribe then the priests. That's cool stuff. You ready to catch what I'm saying? Because I could never figure out. How's it going, Pastor Matt? And so I could never figure out, why didn't God just come up with the Levites first? It's because he's honoring the free will decision of Jacob. At least that's what I've come up with so far. So if that be the case, it indicates that God doesn't move the pieces on the proverbial board of our life. But he does work things out for good, so we learn then that free will is a thing. I think that's a great explanation. I'm not sure if you agree, but there it is. So, in Genesis 48, the sons of Joseph are blessed, so Joseph gets the double portion of the firstborn, which then goes to Ephraim and Manasseh. Any questions so far? Did y'all catch that? Yes.
What was Jacob's free will decision? Did you say Jacob or Joseph?
I may have said Joseph, but I meant Jacob.
Okay, so what was his decision?
To make Joseph one tribe into two,
Okay.
and having his sons Ephraim and Manasseh then each get a portion with everybody else. So it takes it to 13 tribes. So now,
So then if he took the Levites to be his, did he, and so basically then he had 11, did he do that with Joseph's two to make 12 again?
we still have 13. What do you mean they brought it down to 11?
Well, God took the Levites for himself,
Yeah.
basically. So then if you take that out of the 12, you have 11, then you add Manasseh, and there's your 12.
Right.
Do you think that's what he did? To make 12?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying he did.
Oh, okay,
I think.
okay. I was,
Isn't that what I'm saying?
Yeah.
you
But
kept, maybe you said 13.
Ephraim and Manasseh were added to the tribes before Levi was pulled out.
Oh, okay, I got you.
So it was a 13, then it went back
Okay,
down to 12.
okay, thank you.
Thank you.
That's where I was,
We good?
that didn't connect.
Yes.
So was Joseph, like, that was one tribe?
Kinda. He was just one man with two sons.
Yeah. So it
So Joseph would have been his own tribe.
Yeah, but then it was split into Ephraim and Manasseh?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
And so then, by then not taking the firstborn, taking the Levites instead, then all of a sudden you bring your number back to 12 again.
Yeah. Why does it have to be 12 tribes?
Can I answer that question as we go?
Yeah.
Okay. Because I will.
Okay.
Okay. So does that make sense? Just for now, it needs to be 12, but he makes it 12. Okay, so now we go to Genesis 49. We find Jacob's blessing. Interesting here. If you see here, verse 3, Reuben, verse 5, Simeon, verse 5, Levi, again grouped together. And that's kind of important because they were the two that killed all the men of Shechem. And then Judah, down to verse 8, verse 13, Zebulun, verse 14, Issachar. And then you see here in verse 16, you see Dan? He's the fifth born, but now he's listed all the way down here. Issachar, Zebulun are 9 and 10, and they're backwards. But notice there in verse 16, it says, serpent in the way. That's going to be important when we get to Revelation. Okay? Verse 19, we have Gad. Verse 20, we have Asher. Verse 21, Naphtali. Now watch this. Verse 22, Joseph, and then Benjamin. So we still have 12. Joseph gets his own blessing, and then that blessing will go to his sons. All right, so now let's go to the Exodus. Let's go to Exodus chapter 1. See, some of these are just lists, and there's nothing really to talk about here. Exodus chapter 1, we have the 12 sons sorted by mother, then age, the same thing that we did before, but these are in what I would think is the order that you would think that they should be in. So you see here now, these are the names of the children of Israel, which came into Egypt, every man in his household came with Jacob. Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah from Leah. Issachar, Zebulun from Leah. And Benjamin, Rachel. Dan and Naphtali, Bilhah, Gad, and Asher, Zilpah. So then it restates here, and all the souls that came out of the loins of Jacob were 70 souls, for Joseph from Rachel was in Egypt. Okay. So we just listed all of the tribes of Israel right there. You got that, right? Okay. So let's go to Exodus chapter 6. Just another one of those things that I've never seen until this time through. Because we have Exodus chapter 6, we have a genealogy. Now, if you look there in verse 14, you see Reuben. Verse 15, you see Simeon. And then verse 16, you see Levi. You see the first three tribes. Now, scan the rest of the chapter. Do you see anybody else listed? And the answer is no. You can scan if you want, but the answer is no. It's a genealogy of three families and three tribes, and the rest of it is cut off. So genealogies up to this point could help us build a chronology of the Old Testament. All right, let's go to the first slide. I built this little timeline in Excel many years ago. So I know you can't see it all, but in order to make it wide, it had to be narrow. So here you have creation, and then years going forward. And what we could do with the genealogy from Genesis is we know how old Adam was when he died. We know how old Adam was when Seth was born. And so we know this all going forward. And then we get to Noah. Now here Methuselah died a month or two before the flood, which is, I think, pretty cool. Lamech died in the flood. Now Noah, Shem. Oh, we don't talk about Ham and Japheth because we're going for the Israelites here. I had to think about that for a second. So the Shemites. So we go up in order to save space. That guy. Sarai, then going back down. Eber, Peleg, Ru, Surag, Nahor, Terah, Abraham, and then you hear Isaac. Now see how they're all long and then they start getting shorter? It's because of the flood. The blue line right here shortened everybody's life afterwards. The flood changes everything. But up until this genealogy, this is how we track the time. Just like Pastor Matt was talking about in Sunday school, you can track backwards, and we can bring in chronology of the Old Testament, Usher's something of the world, can't remember what it's called. So that's how we get the time. That's how we say the earth, we go down to 4004 BC because we go backwards. But when we start getting over here, we no longer have to use those times, the ages of people, in order to get the age of the Old Testament or the age of the earth. Because what we do here, you see this red mark? The covenant with Abraham. We know when that is, when his life. And then we know from, if you want to jot it down, Galatians chapter 3, verse 16 says this, "And this I say, that the covenant which was confirmed before of God in Christ, the law, which was 430 years after, cannot disannul, that it should make the promise of none effect." So now we can stop. Once we get to Abraham, when we get to the covenant, we no longer have to use the ages of people in order to figure out how old the Bible is, how old the earth is, and all that stuff. Now we can just skip forward 430 years. We know when Moses got there, and then from Moses, then we can use other steps in order to figure out the histories. So, when we get to this in Exodus chapter 6, you can go ahead and take that off. We find just enough to do three things. By the way, the Bible is a cohesive book. We don't read the Old Testament and say, well, that person didn't know about the New Testament when they wrote that. We know about the New Testament. God knew about the New Testament. The Bible is cohesive. We know more about Melchizedek than the people that are around that time, because Hebrews tells us about him. God doesn't spell out deep things in the book. We have to find them. We have to study them. And they're not just, oh, by the way, this is why that's... We find it. We look. So, we just had the genealogy that we talked about back there in Exodus 1. We're going to have another one in Numbers chapter 2 and another one in Numbers chapter 26. So, what this genealogy does, this short little line, is establishes the line of the Levites. And with that, it connects Moses and Aaron to the forefathers, because that's who it is talking about. It establishes Aaron as the high priest. It gives him authority. And it also points out these are real people. That we're not just introducing somebody onto the scene. Hey, this is Moses and Aaron. Well, where'd they come from? There's an introduction. Number 2, Exodus 6 confirms that only 4 generations were in Egypt. The Israelites were not in Egypt for 430 years. They weren't in there for even over 300 years. And this little genealogy of only 3 families proves it was only 4 generations. And that confirms Genesis chapter 15. You want to turn back there? Yeah, go ahead and turn back there. We're in Exodus. Go back to Genesis 15. If you go there quickly. We're going to have to skim some of this here in a minute. Okay, Genesis 15, look at verse 13. So Exodus chapter 6's real short genealogy with only 3 families confirms Genesis 15, 13 through 16. And you read there, verse 13. "And he said unto Abraham, Know of a surety that thy seed shall be a stranger in a land that is not theirs, and shall serve them." So that's talking about Egypt. Semicolon, "And they shall afflict them 400 years." That affliction goes from the Exodus, from crossing the Red Sea. You go backwards 400 years. That's when the affliction starts. And the affliction starts when Ishmael and Hagar are making fun of Sarah and Isaac. Bam, got it right. And so that is not talking about, these phrases are not together. "Stranger in land's not theirs, and shall serve them, and shall afflict them 400 years. Remember, Ishmael was half Egyptian. Hagar was Egyptian. And so that's where that 400 years goes back to. Verse 14, "And also that nation whom they shall serve will I judge." Now this is hundreds of years before. "And afterward they shall come out with a great substance. And thou shalt go to thy fathers in peace, and thou shalt be buried in a good old age." Now watch this. "But in the 4th generation they shall come hither again, for the iniquity of the Amorites is not yet full." All right, slide. Next. So there you see it established. Levi, Kohath, Amram, Aaron, Moses. 4 generations. They couldn't have been in Egypt for 400 years. You go back 4 generations. Brooke is in Arizona somewhere. So with me, you would go Brooke, me, my mom, my grandma. Yeah, we aren't even at, I think she would have been, 110 about now? Yeah. 4 generations right there. You can't stretch out for 400 years. Can't do it. All right, so go ahead and take that one off. So it confirms 4 generations. And then number 3, it makes it obvious to the student that Israel was not in Egypt for 430 years, nor 400 years. It was a max of 4 generations and a max 275 years if you do the math. And again, notice I said obvious to the student. How many people do you think know, well, Israel, or even knows that even Israel was in Egypt, right? You know that Israel wasn't in Egypt, what the Bible apparently says, and it doesn't. All right, let's keep on going because we got to hurry. Numbers chapter 1, we find the first Numbers census. This first listing omits the Levites since they are priests. Joseph is 2 different tribes, Manasseh and Ephraim. So, Angela, this is you. And if you guys are sitting in the right place, Simon, it's you as well. Sometimes you guys mix it up and it throws me off. So this one in Numbers chapter 1, look at 5 through 16. So the Levites get their own census down below. But look here, Numbers chapter 1, look at verse 5. Reuben, verse 6. Simeon, 7. Judah, 8. Issachar, 9. Zebulun. Now watch this, verse 10. Of the children of Joseph, of Ephraim, then you keep on going, of Manasseh. Then verse 11, of Benjamin. 12 of Dan. 13 of Asher. 14 of Gad. 15 of Naphtali. So see that there? These are the nouns of the congregation. So we are still at 12. But we just didn't list Levi. Levi does have a separate census, but that's the one where we establish in Numbers that it's the same as the firstborn within 400 people. Pretty cool. Arrangement of the camp. Let's go to the first slide of that. So there you see the numbers and where they'd be arranged. There's the 12 tribes, minus Levi, but we have Zebulun, Manasseh and Ephraim. Manasseh and Ephraim. Manasseh, Ephraim, right over here. And then you have the Levites kind of in the middle. Moses and the priest, Kohath. Remember, Kohath, Gershon, and Merari are the families who moved the tabernacle. But see that there? So we still have 12. Always 12. Always 12. All right. Now the next one. So remember I talked about how this is if they set up in columns. If they set up in columns. I'm not saying they did, but if they did, it would look like a large cross because Judah is by far the largest, and this train here would be the longest one towards the east. So as Balaam would go up on the hill to overlook it, it would look like a cross if they camped like this. Not saying they did, just kind of interesting. Somebody else thinks that too. Okay. Now the second census of Kadesh Barnea. Now remember, from Numbers chapter 1 to Numbers chapter 26 is 40 years. Any questions so far? Everybody keeping up? Okay. The second census of Kadesh Barnea has 13 again. Numbers 26, you see verses 5 through 48. It lists them. I'm not going to go through them in order to save time. But you see down there in verse 28, it says Joseph, who's the 11th born, but splits in that same verse, Manasseh and Ephraim. See that down there? 26, 28. Chapter 26, verse 28. And there's no Levi until verse 64. Okay, so remember, we're still stuck on, there has to be 12. There always has to be 12. Except one time. Anyways, so now they're about to enter into the promised land. Go to Deuteronomy chapter 27. This was the reading, this will be the reading today, which, if you're like me, you just skimmed this and didn't think much of it. So we have the how to enter the promised land. Did you know that half of Israel was up on one hill and half of Israel was on the other hill as Israel passes through? And half of them were shouting blessings, half of them were shouting cursings. It's right here. And Moses charged the people the same day, saying, these shall stand upon Mount Gizrim, to bless the people when you come over Jordan, Simeon, Levi, and Judah, and Issachar, Joseph. Notice Joseph and Benjamin. So it's not Manasseh and Ephraim. Those two tribes are combined up here to stand up there on the hill. So notice here, these are the sons of the wives. They're yelling blessings. Now looking down here at the, Then we find the sons of the nurses here in verse 13. And these shall stand upon Mount Ebal to curse. Reuben, Gad. Reuben and Zebulun would be sons of Leah, so they'd not fit that. But we have Reuben, who did the thing with Bilhah, and then you have Zebulun, who would be the youngest of all of them, of the nurses' kids. So you see those 6 that are up there. And then you go to verse 14, and the Levites shall speak and say to the men of Israel with a loud voice. And so, but you see the Levites are mentioned there in verse 12. 12, it says Levi. Levi's part of this. So you have 6 tribes on one mountain, 6 tribes on the other one. And so that's just interesting. It's always got to be 12. So then we have Moses' blessing from Deuteronomy 33. We just read this. And in this blessing, there's no Simeon, but there is a Levi. Joseph is mentioned, but then the 2 sons. Look there, verse 6, Reuben, verse 7, Judah, verse 8, Levi, and this is all out of order. Verse 12, Benjamin, verse 13, you have Joseph, but not the 2 sons until we get down to verse 17. What you see there. Verse 18, Zebulun, 18, Issachar, 20 Gad, 22 Dan, 23 Naphtali, 24 Asher. And why no Simeon? And so here is why. Possibly Joshua chapter 19, verse 1. So no Simeon. You following me on Deuteronomy 33? And some believe it's because all of Simeon, when we're going into the promised land, is encompassed inside of Judah. Look here in 19:1. And the second lot came forth to Simeon, even for the tribe of the children of Simeon, according to their families, and their inheritance was within the inheritance of the children of Judah. All right, so bring up the map. Judah, Simeon. I'm sorry, but I've never noticed that. So when we're talking about Judah and Benjamin, when northern Israel splits off, who's ever counted all the tribes? We say the lost 10 tribes. Well, it doesn't count Simeon, because Simeon's part of Judah, inside of Judah. And when we talk about Judah splitting off, Benjamin goes too. And so then in the north and throughout the rest of the entire, many times throughout the rest of the Old Testament, God refers to the northern kingdom as Ephraim. Right? We're going to cover that in Isaiah and all that. And so Judah and Simeon would be together. Now, we're going to get to a curse here in a minute. Notice there's no tribe of Levi. Right? And so then also Simeon will be assimilated into Judah, and that's going to matter here in a minute. So both Levi and Simeon are scattered. Oh, I'm sorry. Do you mind flipping back to Genesis 49 real quick? Got to go quick.
Are we going back to Joshua?
I'm going forward the entire time except for this one little spot. We're going to go to 1 Chronicles after this. All right, Genesis 49 answers why Simeon isn't listed here. However, Levi has to be because Levi still is going into the land. They just don't have a spot. Simeon doesn't have a spot either. Notice here, Genesis 49 and verse 5. Simeon and Levi, this is the blessing of Jacob to the 12 sons. Simeon and Levi are brethren. Instruments of cruelty are their habitations. O my soul, come not thou into their secret, unto their assembly, mine honor. Be not thou united, for in anger they slew a man, and in their self-will they digged down a wall. Cursed be their anger, for it was fierce, and their wrath, for it was cruel. I will divide them in Jacob and scatter them in Israel. So that's why Deuteronomy 33 doesn't mention Simeon, because Simeon gets scattered. There you go. Levi gets scattered, but he's still the Levites, the Levitical tribe. All right. 1 Chronicles, genealogy. We don't need... When we get 1 Chronicles in the reading, that's going to be fun. It's 9 chapters of genealogy. Let's go to Ezekiel 48. Man, I'm trying to go fast. We have like 4 minutes. What do you want to do? Do you want to go a little long? This is a good one. We haven't got to the good stuff yet. Well, we kind of did. An hour and a half.
It's interesting. I don't.
48. What?
I'm interested. I don't want it to just be like thrown in the bed.
Neither do I. But I feel like if I give this again next week, will everybody remember it?
Yeah.
What? Okay. Truthfully, we are only about halfway through the notes. So
We don't want the trim down.
all right. Thank you for that.
I feel like judging the city. Wrap it up.
I just don't want you to go so fast that.
Yeah, I really can't now.
Don't rush.
I guess I'm studying all day up until, like I was telling everybody, 25 minutes before church service, because I was pulled over from other shenanigans for a minute. I was only over there for 20 minutes though, right?
Question.
Yes.
It says Simeon and Levi were scattered, but
Mhm.
Levi ended up being the priest, even though.
Right, but they're still scattered.
Royalty.
Still scattered. They have no spot in that map. No spot. Simeon has a map, but they're scattered.
Didn't the Levites have to go into all the different cities of the map? Is that right?
Well, they live everywhere.
Yeah, that's what I mean.
Yeah. So they are scattered, but because they're the priests, it's probably seen a little bit different, but that's their scattering. Simeon isn't the priestly tribe, so their scattering would be looked at differently.
The Simeon scattered. Because,
No. Are you gonna be able to remember your question?
Maybe.
Levites then would end up being the priests who got scattered the entire time, would come back. Those would be the same people that condemned and had Jesus crucified. Priests, Pharisees, and Sadducees. Yes?
So Simeon scattered because Judah encompassed them, or is it?
Partially, because later on when we talk about the kingdom splitting, Rehoboam, Jeroboam, then northern kingdom, southern kingdom, do you remember Simeon ever being talked about? But it's part of the southern kingdom. So they were scattered. Yeah, I'm just taking that from not being mentioned again, right?
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Because I'd never noticed. It's always been just Judah and Benjamin as the southern kingdom. Simeon's not part of the north.
Do you know if there's a reason why he chose Levi to be priests?
Maybe because of Moses and Aaron. Because Moses was a Levite. Right? Yeah. Yeah, I'm going to go with that to answer that question. I've been trying to think of that too, but through this, I never answered that question. I'm going to go with that probably because Moses and Aaron, their connection with God, and Moses being the man of God, but wanted Aaron to be the speaker for the people, and ended up not even doing that. Ended up still being Moses. All right. Any other questions?